Welcome to the Great Noticing Podcast with Marianne and Emily.
The Great Noticing is about our awakening as people, professionals, parents, and leaders. Noticing empowers us to unravel the old narratives that dominated and defined us.
Noticing supports new patterns and celebrates behaviors that help us create and step into the life we desire. What are you noticing lately?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Great Noticing. I'm Marianne Means-Dufresne, and my co-host, Emily, is currently at the book fair with her first grader. So getting to do, as Sarah and I had just said, as we were warming up, getting to do something important with her family. What a gift that we have in this life. But we're so excited today to get to visit with my good friend, Sarah Webb, the founder of Webb CFO. And Webb CFO provides accounting assistance and long-term financial planning guidance to business owners and their small businesses. And so though Sarah and her team are happy to address the fundamental aspects of day-to-day accounting, they also really want to focus on a strategic approach. And strategy is becoming more and more a part of our world as we have to think about how we transform and how we grow. And so I'm just excited, Sarah, to get to hear your perspective on that and really want to start with what you're noticing.
What I'm noticing with small business owners is we're kind of frenzied after the election and getting ready for 2025. And I think there's a lot of anxiety in what the future holds, no matter who you voted for. Is kind of just a period of uncertainty of what this is going to be. And I think there's lots of ideas of what it could be. I don't think anyone's right. I think it's going to be some crazy combination we haven't dreamed up yet. But I think as business owners, I think people are being cautious as we're wrapping up the end of the year and going into 2025 of what could be. And from a strategic standpoint, kind of considering what are some things I need to be able to pivot on quickly should one thing happen or another. So I think there's a lot of thinking about the future and not really making any big moves right now.
Yeah, kind of contingency planning.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are examples of that you've seen?
The biggest one, I think, is in hiring right now. Everyone's frozen of like, okay, let's see what's going to happen. Taking on an employee, especially for any business, but especially for a small business, is a big investment. And I think business owners really beat themselves up when, they have to let someone go or they have to reduce their workforce, as they should. Hiring people and caring for people is a big responsibility.
That's right.
Yeah. And so I think there's a little bit of freeze on, should we hire another person, or can we make do with what we have, or can we use a contractor or a part-time arrangement versus fully committing to an additional headcount?
Yeah, I really see that in looking at more opportunities to create flexibility. So can we use a contractor? And I think for small business owners who are kind of in that small to medium size category, because they're so used to hiring full-time equivalents, they forget that contractors really are a viable option. And leaders and organizations forget that that's a move that they can make that provides some immediate relief, but doesn't commit them to something that they can't sustain.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, that's where Webb CFO fits in. We are individual, we're people's whole accounting department if they're really tiny. And sometimes we're intermediate support. We've covered a lot of personal leaves, or if there's been some type of change, we'll go in and help them to get organized. And then after, 3 to 6 months, we're like, okay, now we can help you hire someone. You don't necessarily need our expertise anymore.
Right.
And so, for us, we are those contractors to other people in certain instances.
Yeah. When did you know that Webb CFO was a thing, that you had to launch it?
Oh, that's a very good question. So I've been a business owner since 2018. I had a business before that I sold. It wasn't performing how I wanted it to perform. And so in 2018, I just was like, I need to make some money. I'm a CPA. What can I do today? And by the end of that first year, I had 3 employees. And it probably was after the first 9 months that I was like, okay, this is a real business beyond just me wanting to make some money to support my family. It was like, okay, now I need to put some structure. I've kind of tested it, not intentionally. I always tell people oh, it was like a beta. I don't say it was a beta test. Yeah, it was a pilot, but it was a pilot because I needed to make some money and I know how to do accounting. And so I had to get a lot more organized after adding employees and understand how it was viable and to make it work for me, kind of into that. So really probably going into 2019, it was like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is a lifestyle. This is a business that I can make work for myself.
I really identify with that progression of moving beyond providing a service to running a business. I think I've told you this before. I called myself a reluctant entrepreneur because it wasn't really a part of my plan ever to run a business. But when you see this works, this is providing for my family, and people need this, then there's, wait, how many more people need this? And how do we talk about scalability? That's when we kind of get serious about it.
I was not a reluctant entrepreneur. I was the person who always had a corporate job, and my husband got to be the entrepreneur first. And I was so jealous because my spirit is much more entrepreneurial than his. And I always call myself being a business owner. But,
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to be an adult and work a little bit longer in corporate. And it's all worked out. I think after that first or second person, whether they're a contractor, whatever that your team is, that's when you do think like, okay, this is bigger than me. And so it does need more structure and more thought into just, I'm going to wake up today and work on something.
That's right. How did you shift from this service delivery to building a business? What resources did you look for or find, or did you already have this innate skill?
I think I've probably always been called bossy at a certain level. So, and I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And so, I've always read business books. I listened to podcasts. I didn't necessarily have like a mentor at the beginning of like, here's how to build an accounting firm. But I actually had a list of things that I did not want to have in the business. So having been an employee of people, I was like, I never want to have someone give me a review note on how I put a staple not at a 90-degree angle. So I had this very long list of things that I did not want to do, or I didn't want my employees to feel in the workplace. And so it was more of a, I don't want this type of workplace, so I'm going to build else.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like a this, not that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Which is, I think, a great way to start, because then you're able to say, based on this, here's blue sky, right? Here's the broad paintbrush of where our values lie in order to create an environment. And I think the kinds of things that you're bringing up are not unique to Sarah Webb, right? They're probably things that most people would say that behavior or those decisions are not motivating.
Yeah. I mean, simple things like people. So we've never had an office. I started in 2018 and we've always been a virtual workforce. And so when we went into 2020, that was like, oh, you're virtual. And I'm like, well, we've actually been working like this for quite a bit of time. So we had some not known to us one up on like working remotely and being organized differently and using technology in a different way that others had to adapt more quickly. We were kind of set unintentionally because I just did not want to have to get up and go somewhere every day.
There you go. I love it. But there again, being led by your own gut, by your response to situations, by desires. That's a theme that I'm hearing for you, is you trust yourself.
Yeah, I do trust myself. And sometimes, that's an experiment too. Sometimes it doesn't always work out. I call it experimenting. And I do try to experiment first at a smaller level with different things. And sometimes I just have to say, okay, that was an experiment that didn't turn out well, but now I have this information and I'm going to do something different next time. I'm not like a giver-upper on like what I want the end thing to do, but my experiment is more about the path on how I'm going to get there. Like, hey, that it didn't work when we did XYZ. So now we're going to do 1, 2, 3 and see if we get there.
This was blocked, but this avenue could work and is still open. How did you come to be, I don't know if we call it trusting your gut or feeling self-possessed? Were you raised that way? How did that become a part of you?
So I'm an Enneagram 8, if people are on all of that. I've been that since, once I'm like, yes, this is who I am. And I think my parents definitely led me to, they never used the word experiment, but let me fail. Yeah. I think I was in the mode very early on of being a perfectionist. I received lots of accolades academically and, I'm a people pleaser. I was a teacher's daughter. So, was it pleasant to have in class and all of those things? They really tried to say that doesn't define you. Like you're so much more than that. And it's okay if you make mistakes. And I think for me, my upbringing, sports was a really big part of that. And I wasn't a state champion. Like I didn't win all our games. And I think, learning to fail and learning how to be a teammate are lifelong skills that you can use in lots of places.
Absolutely. What sports did you play?
Played volleyball and basketball, and I was also a cheerleader. So kind of did a little bit of everything.
That's wonderful. It's great. And that's something I think the high school environment provides. as we know it in Texas with football being so strong, so many other sports are strong too, that kids get to experiment and play. And having come from a athletic background where I really focused on one sport, soccer, I want my kids to experience more diversity in the experiences that they're having and how they're training too, because different sports offer different modalities and different ways of thinking. So it's great to experiment, exactly to your point.
Yeah, I think we're losing that honestly a little bit in Texas. So I have an athlete and at age 12, she only plays volleyball because she's only playing volleyball because it conflicts with the other sports. We tried some of them. I'm not sad she's only playing volleyball, but I do think we get to be at a highly competitive level. You kind of have to decide early on what that sport is. I worry about you don't get to be the multi-athlete anymore because let's be honest, the only 1 to 2% of all high school kids are going to play sports in college, but sports is so much more than sports. Yeah. I try to define it because I do have an athlete. I was like, do you think I've liked every coach that I've had? No, it's the same with bosses. You're not going to like every boss, right? But you have to learn how to get along with people. And we have a lot of discussions on sports related type things because that's what she can relate to in her current life. I was like, I have not always enjoyed the person I sat next to at work.
That's
I
right.
learned how to get along. That's part of being on a team.
So many good life lessons. I know.
Absolutely.
But to your point, I think we can take it too far. And even thinking, to be competitive. And she's 11 or 12?
She's 13 now.
Okay. Yep. To be competitive, it's like you have to do club or you have to, really focus on this one sport. And I've had this conversation so many times about us in America and our competitiveness. And when is it helpful and when is it harmful? And this is one of those areas that I'm like, oh gosh, why do we get so serious so fast?
I get it. I'm a serious person, but yes, I agree. I feel like there's a lot of kids that bail out earlier than they would have if we were creating an environment for a multi-sport athlete.
That's what we can work on is for the kid that is really serious about this, that sees a future in it, or they just really like that sport. They want to play hard and they pursue excellence in their lives. There's a path for them. And then there's also a path and the support system to say, you don't have to be great to enjoy this game.
Right.
You don't have to be great to get attention for this game. We can play it for the fun of it. Like you play a board game.
Yeah. Well, it's like I'm wanting to take up more pickleball. I never even played tennis, right? Like what sport? But I'm like, I'm sporty and I can still have a nice time and it's a good workout. I can do it. Yeah, exactly. I've been taking a few private lessons because I'm like, I just don't want to I'm so competitive. I just don't want to get hammered. I'm not going to win, but I just don't want to be embarrassed of getting beat so badly.
Exactly. It's not fun if you get absolutely crushed, right? You want that part of the game is being able to rally back and forth and have fun with it. Emily and I over summer went and played tennis at her tennis club and they take it pretty seriously there. And I have not played in, 12, 15 years. And was terrible. And she was not much better. But there were people playing doubles next to us that had won the club championship that year. And they were making comments about us and really why are you out here? And I was shocked because I'm like, so you're telling me that you don't think you should try something if you're not good at it? Why does it threaten and trigger you for me to be out here stinking it up? It's not like I'm hitting my ball at you. I'm not bothering you.
You're like, I'm not even going to be able to play with you, and that's okay.
Right. Exactly. It was very interesting.
It was a mean girl moment.
It was a mean girl moment. Yes. And I don't know where that comes from. I'm sorry that
you do know where that comes from. You know what I mean? People are mean.
Why?
Because something is happening in their lives. Hurt people hurt people. So either someone said something to her beforehand, your outfit's not cute. Or what? See, it's just passing it on. She could have woke up and one of her kids was snappy, but the reason that she said something is because she felt insecure about herself.
Yeah, bad energy. That very rarely happens. I know people that tell stories like that all the time about mean girl stuff. I'm maybe blessed or maybe I don't have eyes that see it. So that really stuck out to me I guess this stuff really does happen sometimes.
I think as we get older and wiser, I think we just tolerate it less. I said, there's a lot of people that I'm talking about energy that I'm we're just not a good fit. And being in a certain groups and certain social situations are too draining for me. I'm just not putting myself out there. I have so much to do and so many things I want to do in my life that I can't waste energy on that. I've got some big things to accomplish and you're bringing me down, so.
Well, and commitment to that, which again is trusting your gut. And you mentioned people pleasing, have always been a people pleaser and have always had major FOMO. Like even something I didn't want to go to, if somebody invited me, I'd say yes, because I like making plans. That's exciting to me. But they asked me, I don't want to hurt feelings. And now becoming older and wiser, as you stated, but being more secure and being more confident. And it's not mean to say no. It's that we have to make choices. And our plates are full enough that we can't do everything, and feeling confident in that. So maybe I'm becoming more like Sarah, where I'm trusting my gut more.
Well, I read a book. It's written by Shonda Rhimes, wrote The Year of Yes or something to that effect. And I like her. I like what she's doing. But she talked about being very introverted and a lot of things. So she committed to this yes. I read the book and I was like, I'm committing to a year of no.
No, that was my response. A year
That
of
was
no.
maybe that's just her personality. She needed a year of yes, and that
Yes.
gave her. But I needed a year, and maybe 2 or 3 now going on. I needed a year of no.
No.
And so if it doesn't, I don't go through a rubric every time, but I kind of go through a decision tree of like, okay, like these are my 3 big goals. Does this align? Sometimes I'm like, I just really want to do that and go have fun. Yes. But I am saying no to a lot more things.
Yeah. Well, I think you're bringing up the importance of contrasts. So our path to growth is often the thing that we don't want to do, or the opposite of the thing that we are habitually doing. And I use this in my coaching all the time, that if somebody is really lenient with their team, we're going to have to do some things that help them start to pay attention differently and use an accountability structure. If somebody is used to moving so fast and they have an attention span like this, we're probably going to work on meditation. Sorry, it's their kryptonite, but guess what? It's that, or it's yoga. It's something to slow you down. So it's like whatever's happening that is not working for us or is causing problems, we're going to push on that hard enough that it's uncomfortable and try something different.
I think we have to do that if we want to be any type of better version of ourselves. And I'm not like a person that's always like, I have to be better than but I do think there's a certain like state that we can always be striving to be. Be working on that for a lifetime.
That's right. What are you working on right now?
This summer was really tough business-wise. And so I'm kind of coming off this detox of workaholism. Yeah. Not that I haven't had it in like bouts in the past, but right now I'm working. I'm really having a hard time relaxing. Yeah. And so disconnecting. And so I'm being more intentional, kind of even guarding my time, business and personally, but more intentional about, it's okay to sit and do nothing for a little bit. It's okay to sit and enjoy a good book. Yeah. That's what I'm kind of struggling with right now.
Yeah, I'm the same right there with you, and have had this conversation a few times lately, especially with other business owners. The work that we're trying to move forward, we're deeply passionate about. We're in the right place. This is such a blessing and such a gift. It's like you're on train tracks and just honed in on what has to get done. And there's a lot of pressure related to that. And I find it hard to stop the day's work, shift, go be with the kids. It's like a completely different way of being. And I'm really paying attention to trying to be more fluid in that. And I don't know if it's even possible, but like I'm thinking deeply about something, I'm planning, I'm executing, I'm moving, turn it off like a switch and shift to this next thing, whether it's lunch with a friend or dinner with the kids. It's hard to do. I think I'm getting a little bit better, but I wonder what you're doing to help yourself turn the switch off.
I'll come back to that, but I want to pause for a second.
Hey noticers, it's a new year. Why not start it with your best skin yet? If you've never experienced the magic of Hannah Azul Korean skincare, you are missing out. Myung Chong has been working her skincare magic for 27 years, creating what's now famously called the Hannah Azul Glow. I've been seeing her for years, and let me tell you, the results are real. My skin feels smoother, brighter, and just better. Her products are packed with medical-grade ingredients that take your glow to the next level. So if your skincare routine could use a reboot, or you just want to feel incredible in your own skin, visit hannahazul.com. That's HANNAISUL.com and see what the hype is all about. Be sure and visit Myung really soon. Trust me, your skin will thank you, and so will future you.
when you
Yeah.
talked about the pressure of your business,
Mm-hmm.
is that pressure internal? Like, are you putting the pressure on yourself of your own expectations, or is there an external pressure of some type?
Well, the external pressure of the need to grow the business, kind of being a year and a half ago at a place of grow or fail. And so the decision was grow. And so put several things in place to up my business, my selling activity, and grow and start to scale the business. So there's a need created drive. So that drove me forward. But then now I've built enough business that it is like, you better get it done, sister. And you better figure out if you don't have, to our point earlier, everybody you need for this particular contract for execution, you better line it up right now, because we've got to have those contractors in line on these different things. But right now, there are not enough hours in the day to accomplish what needs to be accomplished. So how are we going to make sure that happens?
Yeah. Because I find most of my pressure is the internal pressure.
Yeah.
Because I want to succeed, because I'm competitive, and because I want to win. And I see that as a form of winning. But boundaries, my kids are a little bit older than yours. Mine are 13 and 15. So they're a little bit more self-sufficient, but they don't drive. So they make a lot of social plans, and then I get to drive them.
You're the taxi.
I'm the taxi.
Yeah.
I think some boundaries that have I pick up my kids from school every day. I adjust my calendar around that. That doesn't mean I don't work later. As I said, my daughter plays volleyball, so I'm in a gym a lot. I'm working in the gym because I don't necessarily need to be like, I want to spend my time with her in the car when we're riding so we can have a conversation, or at the tournaments. And so I work a lot during practice. I try to squeeze in time where people aren't needing my full attention. And that's kind of an example. And so I don't think I have the greatest boundaries, and that's okay for right now. When my kids were smaller, and definitely when they were closer to your kids' age, they had to have that attention at a different level than older kids do.
Sure.
And so I'm trying to make myself more available for the talks, for the meals, for the time in the car, because it's forced togetherness, which I love. But I'm more strategic of like, well, they don't need me to sit and snuggle and watch a movie with them anymore. If they want to watch a movie, they can, and I'm going to do some other things. So I'm very intentional about the opportunity. And sometimes I'm like, hey, do you want to hang out? Like, is it important that we spend this time together? Because they're able to articulate that a little bit more. And sometimes it's like, no, I'm perfectly fine doing this by myself.
That's a great approach. Actually find out what the kid is needing.
Sometimes they're like, why are you here? Like, and I was like, I thought we were spending time together. And they're like, no, this is, and I'm like, oh,
So
I'm kind of almost, I'm kind of like hurt. Yeah. Like, it's very teenager. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'll just go do something else.
Right. With someone who loves me.
Yeah, exactly.
My parents would talk about that time in the car on the way to sports and like how much they treasured it. Which makes sense, because if you're at home, the kid is not going to be sitting next to you with no TV on and starting to open up about what's happening in their lives.
Well, my kids have phones, so we do also have no phone time in the car, because and you don't necessarily have to talk to me, but we're going to listen. Right now we're listening, to music. I'm like, you need to learn how to have a conversation even when you don't want to. Ask someone about the weather. Ask someone about their day. I mean, because kids and adults are so into their own selves and phone and all of that. I'm like, you don't have to talk to me the full 45 minutes that we're driving, but we're at least having half the time with no phone. And you don't have to talk to me. Yeah. They always talk. They always talk once you take the phone away and just turn on the music. But
that's such a great point, because I hadn't thought my kids are so far away from phones. I hadn't even thought about that, but great reminder. And as a safety issue, if you want to be able to get a hold of your child. I was at a Christmas party last night where parents who had some older kids were talking about this. We don't want them on social media, so getting a burner phone or getting a flip phone or whatever that kids can use for safety, but not have the vulnerabilities that you would with internet and that kind of thing.
It's almost a full-time job being in IT. I feel like my husband and I we call ourselves the IT department for the mesh network in our house. And my husband accidentally put me, not that I was watching anything inappropriate, but I couldn't access probably Yellowstone because I was on the wrong network, and that has a mature rating. There was something I was like, you've put me on the kids network and all I want to do is watch this movie,
So that's pretty great though.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll have to learn on those tricks from you. I have no idea how all of that works.
It changes.
So what's been your approach to social media with your kids?
So my son is older. He's 15. He does not have any social media. He was literally the last one in his grade at the end of 6th grade who did not have a phone. It was good. He's not my asker. He is a very content personality. My daughter is 13 and she's not a content personality. And so she got her phone probably the middle of 6th grade, and it was time. She was still one of the last ones. It was when she went to someone's house to spend the night for the first time that I did not know. Before that, I had always been a much closer. As your kids get older, they form these relationships, which is great. It's not always about the parent and the kid anymore. And so it is a little different. She has a volleyball Instagram page that is me as her PR person. And so it's only volleyball. So she gets to definitely see that. We've talked about letting her have social media a little bit earlier. My son even wrote a petition for my daughter to have what's called Be Real. It's like baby, I wouldn't call it younger social media. He was like, you should let her do that. Like, it's really fine.
That wrote a petition.
He was like, I do think you should let her do this. It's like appropriate. And I was like, well, do you want it? And he was like, well, no, I don't want it. But I mean, he was like, I think you should let her do that. And so
Did he write this down?
On that one, he did not write it down. But my kids do write papers. I'll tell you about that. But so she has Be Real, and my husband is kind of monitoring that. So, I mean, we're pretty, like, both of my kids would be like, y'all are the strictest people on technology. And I'm like, you're not, you haven't been uninvited to anything.
Not right.
You know,
and you're going to thank me later, kids.
Yeah. My husband is a family attorney. And so he sees a lot of the terrible of the terrible. And I think Snapchat is going to be the biggest no. That's that. I mean, he's just like, age appropriate. We can let them have some things, but probably Snapchat is going to be the one we don't let go for a long time. So
good. Okay. So tell me about these papers.
Okay. So because I'm a CPA, I feel like that financial literacy is just like of utmost importance.
Yeah.
And my family, we didn't talk like investments or like how much money we had, but we always were aware of we could save more money if we didn't go out to eat, or we could spend our money doing this instead of that, like more like that trade-off decision making. And so I didn't realize until I was in college and really until I was married that other people did not have these conversations in their homes. That was not something that they discussed. And so this summer, both my kids had the opportunity to write papers to tell me the difference between a Roth IRA and a regular IRA. If their answer in their paper was complete and, satisfactory, my husband and I funded their Roth IRAs this year. So they both did write a paper. I think one of them definitely used ChatGPT for assistance, but it wasn't perfect. So I don't think the whole thing was definitely not written in there. But there was some, I was like, they definitely put in the research for it. You can, next time you see them, you can ask either one of them what the difference is and why it's important. And they can definitely have a conversation with you. So
that's incredible. And y'all have always had these conversations in your family in this way around kind of trade-offs.
Trade-offs, yes. There's a lot of like, oh, such and such is going to Cabo this weekend. Why can't we do that? I'm like, well, that is so fun for them because I don't want to take away that is fun. Like it is fun that, but I'm like, but we're planning a vacation this or we're doing this. And so we kind of like, we have a lot of trade-offs. And both my kids house sit, babysit, pet walk, all those types of things. And so sometimes when they want something that I'm like, I'm not paying for that. I'm like, that's 5 hours of you babysitting. Yeah. Like, is that really what you want? Yeah. And they're like, oh no. Or when they want a Starbucks for this 3rd time that week. And I'm like, yeah, we've already, and they'll say, oh, I'll pay for it. I'm like, at this point, it's almost 1 hour of babysitting or at least half an hour of babysitting for your specialty drink. And they're like, oh, never mind. I don't want to now that they both have a little bit of their own money, it's been very hard for me to let them, what I call fail at like spending it. But I'm like, they have to spend it on things and realize it's not that important for them to even, and I can't think like a candy bar or something. Like, I'm like, $3 a checkout candy bar? Are you kidding me? Like, A, I don't want them eating the sugar. 2, I think that's a big waste of money. Like all the things, but I'm like, I have to let them like fail at these things. I'm always like, we have like 1 pound of Halloween candy that you could, it's things like that annoy me probably as a CPA and generally a frugal person. But I'm like, I have to let them fail at this. If they want to spend $3 to $5 on a 1-bite candy bar, like they have to fail and waste their own money.
That's right. And realize, but you're probably better about not rescuing later because I will set the early limit. And then when they're really sad that they don't have XYZ later, I'll figure out a way that, okay, do more chores or, like holding the line around the consequence is the hard part.
Yeah, your kids are probably at the age. Do y'all go to the Friday night football games or
Not
Sun-
yet.
Not
Not
yet. Okay. Well, this year, each of my kids got $200 on their debit card for all snacks the whole fall semester. Don't
Oh,
ask me
wow.
for a soda. Do not ask me for 1 penny because the answer is going to be no.
Wow.
And one kid still has, $110 and the other one has like $4. But I'm like, it is what it is. But,
Yeah.
next year when you start going to games like that, give them
Mhm.
$5 or $10, whatever you
Mhm.
would normally spend.
Yeah.
And I tell my kids they can always keep what they don't spend.
Okay.
And it's very interesting that they don't want 5
Yeah.
hot dogs now. Now they just want one in a glass of water,
Yeah.
versus like they really start making those decisions. It's very interesting
Okay.
to see.
I think we might need like a whole list of Sarah's tips and tricks on helping raise smart, financially savvy kids. Maybe that's your book.
Maybe that's my book. Maybe so.
But what I'm hearing is it's not lectures. It's not, let me tell you about the importance of money. It's real experience with how to handle money and some tough love.
And I'm like, y'all will get smarter and pack your snacks ahead of time. And one of them did and one of them doesn't. And they were kind of like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
So
And that may be how they always are. There may just be
Sure.
one kiddo that's never as great with money, but you're still helping them to not make really big mistakes.
Right. I'm
Yeah.
trying to give them enough to make a mistake that's not extra painful.
Right. Small
It's
consequences.
Small consequences.
Yeah.
No one at this house is going to starve if they do not have a snack at the football game. Right.
Right.
They can also drink out of the water fountain. There's
Mhm.
no terrible consequences.
Yeah, I've had a couple with a 2-year-old, and of course that's, you never know what's going to happen. But her behavior has been pretty tough. She's throwing tantrums and does not want to hear no and will just completely fly off the handle. But I've been paying attention. It's really just with me. She doesn't do it with Matt. She's been doing it at school though, and her teachers complained about it this week. Not complained, but they're like,
Yeah.
"You've been
Hey, something going on.
Right,
Yeah. Is she
exactly. And
sleeping?
no,
Blah, blah,
exactly. What, how's she been at home? I'm like, it's been a nightmare. It's been a really rough couple of weeks. We traveled last week, this and that. I realized that the more exacerbated her behavior got, the more I was giving in because I was tired.
Yeah.
I didn't want to fight it anymore, or we had to leave the house or whatever it was. And so I'm trying to reset now around getting tough. And so I think that's something I'll have to pay attention to is getting tired and not keeping the bar high.
I feel like 2 to 4 is the longest time period that children are. And even now as an adult, when I feel like myself a little bit out of control and like I'm tired, I do put myself to bed early and I'd make myself drink more water. And I know like I'm listening to my own body. And at 2 and 4, you don't have the verbal or, you're not able to say what's happening to you.
Yeah.
And so my answer to everything is to go to bed early or drink more wordy. Yeah, drink more water. That's my answer to everything.
Those are not bad answers at all.
I mean, they're not going to make you feel worse.
No, they sure won't. How much sleep do you need a night?
I am a sleeper. I'm probably between 6 and 8 hours every night. And if I could do 8 hours every single night, I would. 2 years ago, I started working out early in the morning, twice a week. And so when you wake up at 4:45, you have to go to bed early. But sometimes it's harder to turn it off on those.
Yeah.
Like those are the nights I feel like I'm hitting like 6. And sometimes I'll take a 20-minute power nap before I go pick up my family. Because I'm just like, I've been up for a while.
Power naps are incredible.
But I see the same thing in the behavior of my kids of like, they need more rest. We're a go to bed early family.
That's awesome. The kids go to bed about the same time. Margot needs a little less rest than Hogan does. Matt needs 5 or 6 hours of sleep a night. And I'm so jealous because if I get less than 8, I'm tired.
No, I'm not jealous of that. Like that to me seems exhausting.
I know, but he's not exhausted. He's fine.
But I guess, is he using that time for good? Like, is he reading? Is he relaxing or is he just?
Of course, he's using his time so wisely. He decompresses differently. So he's one of those that he wants to be doing 3 things at once. So like he's reading his news, he's playing a game on his iPad, and he has a show on. I don't know how, it's this magical brain. I can barely do one thing at a time.
We are each wired differently.
Yeah,
So if that works for him, I'm a sleeper.
Yeah.
And I can tell when it catches up with me. I will take a power nap sometimes during the week, but on the weekends, I do try to take a.
Isn't that great?
Yeah. That's really good.
recharge.
Mhm.
That's a really wonderful way to sustain our energy. And that's something I tell clients too, is we often think, oh, I need a vacation. And we get fixated on this, well, I need a vacation or I need a sabbatical. Well, actually, if you started getting better sleep, eating better, taking naps, you'd be really surprised at how much you can refresh yourself and then become more sustainable with your energy output over time.
Yeah, I call that fatalist thinking. I used to be thinking like that any decision that I made, I had to stick with it for the rest of my life. Just anything like, whatever it was, I'd be like, okay, this is how it is the rest of my life, that one decision.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, now I've kind of altered my thinking of like, this is the decision I'm making now. It may be good for 3 months. It may be good for 6 months. And I can
Yeah.
always change it. Yeah.
Give it a little wiggle room. Give it some
Yeah.
flexibility.
And I think the vacation of like, oh, I'll feel so much better. Like, yeah, you will. You definitely need a disconnect. But
Yeah.
if you're like me, when you come back from vacation, you're overwhelmed. And so really it just kind
Yeah.
of starts the cycle again. And so I
That's
think
right.
to me, it's the smaller habit. I love vacation. Everybody deserves vacation.
Yes.
But I notice when I'm making more day-to-day changes, I'm able to like
Right.
sustain those much more into
Mhm.
my body and energy than the one time.
Absolutely. And still be in it. It's like we don't have to have a complete life shift. Like, what do we have now that can bring us more joy and more rest and more peacefulness? Yeah, love it. Well, Sarah, I can't wait for your book now because I need to read it probably for my own spending habits.
You can be a tester and you can say, okay, this works, this doesn't
Yes.
work.
Oh my gosh. I would love to have a tool. Like if it could be simple and things that we could just start integrating, that would, I think, really be transformational for really feeling like I'm preparing my kids for the world,
I think there's a lot of things we can do for our kids. And there's definitely things, I'm like, oh, I wish we would have done this or, and then I'm like, my kids are not too late. They're still live here every day and I can still impact and make decisions. I think a lot of it has to do with our own, whatever it is, financial, healthy eating, like whatever your thing is. It is so much of how we were raised and kind of taking, in my mind, I had an excellent childhood. I still have very strong bonds with my parents and my siblings. I had a great childhood.
That's awesome.
And so what are some of the best things from that I can take from that experience and, pass on generationally?
Absolutely.
And then what are some areas that's surprised me as I got older? Like, especially around the holidays, you're like, oh, your family always has matching pajamas. Like, we're not a matching pajama family. Like things like that you're like, I didn't know other people did that.
It's just an awareness thing. And then we get to choose. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for joining us today on The Great Noticing. It's been wonderful to have this conversation. I'm inspired in a way that I didn't expect to be. So yay. And so we'll have to do a part 2 where you bring us some more wisdom for our kids and how we're helping them to navigate the financial world. But thank you, everybody, so much for joining us on The Great Noticing. It was a pleasure having Sarah Webb of Webb CFO. And so please like and share our content and be sure to let us know what you're noticing. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Great Noticing podcast. Don't forget to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform. And for more information and to keep up with Marianne and Emily, visit thegreatnoticingpodcast.com. And remember, what are you noticing lately?